Okay, making brackets for these BMW seats to go into the El Camino. So one of the reasons I chose the BMW seats, they're super nice. The driver's side is 8-way power. This is 6-way power. They're heated, and the shape looks cool. And I think they fit the style of the car. So that was important. But then BMW, the seat tracks you can see here are totally flat. And the floorboard in the BMW obviously is flat as well. So that's just a nice, easy system to work with. Other cars, they angle and do weird stuff, but these are totally straight, totally flat. And so here's the El Camino floorboard where we're going, in the driver's seat's already mounted. I got it done, but I'll shoot the video here now that I sort of know what I'm doing. So the factory seat mounts, you can see here, 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 and here. The first 3 holes mount through the cross member, making it really, really strong. This front inside hole doesn't. It's over sheet metal. The factory for bucket seats, for bench, there's no bolt there, so it doesn't matter. For the factory for bucket seats, they have a bracket that goes over here. It connects to the back cross member, the frame under the sheet metal. And then that supports it, because you don't want to just bolt your seats to sheet metal. That's not strong. And so I made my own bracket, because the factory one was $100. So I just took 1/8 inch steel and made the same thing, and then tack welded it down there. But I really want to use these factory holes because they're connected to these cross members, and they're strong, and it's connected here. And I don't want to drill more holes and weld more stuff on the car. I was originally going to go with a different style bucket seat that came with a bracket for the factory car. Ended up not liking those seats, so I went with the Beamer seats. But those tracks don't fit these bolt holes, of course. So I got to make a bracket to make them work. And so what I start off by doing, I just take this piece of steel. This is 3/16. I wanted it to be heavy duty, and then I just measured from here to here at 17 3/4 inches, and you can see this piece fits here. So and the front and back are exactly the same, because these tracks are straight, and they're parallel and all that kind of stuff. What I end up with is a piece like this that I've drilled already. So these holes line up here and here with the factory holes in the floor. And so that's going to bolt down tight to the floor, and it's going to be super sturdy. I had to hammer this, which was really sad because these were brand new floor pans. But to get the seat over far enough, to clear the center console, I had to hammer these in maybe a 1/2 inch, not too bad, and a little bit here. Okay, and then it didn't quite hammer down flat, so you can see this is bent up just a little bit. That's okay. It's going to work just fine. And so what I'm going to do is, again, bolt this down here and here, and then I'm actually going to weld a stud from the back side up that the seat will just drop on. Because trying to get there, if I had to put a captive nut under here, there's no room for it, right? It would hit the floor and it'd be standing up and wouldn't work. So I'm just going to do a bolt, right, like 1 inch tall at each 4 of the 4 corners that the new seat just drops onto. So that's what we're doing. All right, for that stud that I talked about, I'm going to use a carriage bolt. I'm going to come, I'm not confident that just welding a bolt into that hole without some kind of head is going to be strong enough. And a regular hex bolt, the head's going to be too much. This will go in, and I'm going to hammer it down, right, so it's flush, and you end up with only like just over 1/8 of an inch of head on that. So it's got plenty of clearance. And then I showed where this is bent a little bit to fit the floor. I'm going to angle this a bit so it's perpendicular. Before I weld it down, I'll just tweak it a little bit, clamp it, right? And this shoulder here, I've ground it down. I've rounded the corners so it will go into that hole. and this was galvanized. I had these laying around. This is like a 4 or 5 inch carriage bolt. What I'm going to do is go ahead and weld it in. I ground the galvanized the zinc off because you don't want to be welding zinc. Not good. I'm going to go ahead and weld that in first, and then I'll cut it to length, and then, you know, chase those threads on the end so the bolt goes on and off nice and easy. And there I used a magnet here to hold that so that it's super close to 90 degrees to the main area here. So that carriage bolt is tack welded down. Certainly not pretty, but it's strong, good penetration on the base and the bolt. And you see I've cut it down, and I ground a taper and chase the threads. It's a good idea, a good tip. When you're welding this bolt on, go ahead and put a stack of bolts on the thread so you don't get weld spatter. And then before you make the cut, to cut this to length, if you're going to cut it, have a couple bolts there, or nuts there, to you know, go ahead and cut it, grind a bevel onto it. Then you can run the bolts out and chase those threads, because if you cut it, it's going to be kind of jagged, and then getting a bolt on there is going to be kind of hard. But if you got a bolt on it, or a nut on it, it's going to be easy. And you can see that that stud is perpendicular to the main bracket. You can see I got a nut on here, and the reason is we're going to I want the seat rail to stand up off this metal a little bit, because there's going to be a bolt head here, and there's not enough clearance, so the seat track would hit this bolt head and stand up anyway. So I want it to stand up and be supported. So I got that first nut, I got a washer, the track's going to sit on that, and then I'll bolt the track down. Just a note on that carriage bolt stud that I welded in there, you know, it's welded, it's going to hold, but you know, the main force is going to be up, right? So the purpose of the welds is to you know, keep that from pulling through that way and coming loose and spinning and all that kind of stuff, right? The actual pressure when it's in the car and mounted, right, that bolt head is going to be down on the floor pan. So, you know, it's going to have support underneath here. I'm not sure I'd be happy with, you know, those holding the weight of the seat and the passenger, right, over time, particularly in a collision, right? So that's going to be against the floor pan itself, right? So there's that. So there it is, bolted down to the factory bolt holes, and you can see that bolt head, like I talked, is tight against the floor pan. Nice and secure. The reason I didn't go ahead and put the other one in yet, I'm going to put the seat in, I'm going to mark it. It was hard because this is curved. The seat wants to slide, and you know, in a couple directions. So I go, I'll just put an anchor point here, put the seat on this stud, and then it'll be easier to hold and exactly mark that next hole. Okay, so I've got the seat in, of course, and this outside track, I went ahead and put the nut on this stud. You know, the one downside to using these studs to put the seat on is if you're not careful as you put the seat down, you could booger the threads up, but you just got to be careful. I mean, how many times are the seats coming in and out, right? But now I can maneuver the seat and get it exactly square in the car before marking that other hole. And what's super nice here is we've got this track, which is perfectly straight, and we've got a nice reference point, which is the sill. So I can measure, you know, from where it's bolted here to the edge of the sill, and then from this track to the edge of this sill, and I'll know it's square, and then I can mark this hole up here and go ahead and drill it, put a stud in it, and I'll know seat is absolutely square in the car. If you ever sat in a car that's had custom seats put in and they're not square, it's obvious, even if they're off a little bit, and it's not a sign of quality. Put it that way. Okay, I've got that hole marked exactly where to put it on the bracket, and you'll notice it's up about almost an inch here. It turns out the floor in this car is not level. And the seats, you know, the stock seats compensate for that, for the stock brackets. And you can see over here on this driver's side, what I did, if you can see it, is I put a longer stud in, and then again I put a bottom bolt, and I left enough room on that so that I could run that up and down a little bit. Gave myself, you know, 3/4 of an inch or something of adjustment on this. And then what I do is just lay a level across the seat and make an adjustment here until that seat's perfectly level. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I've got the other stud welded in there, and you can see I've got a bolt underneath and a washer, so I can adjust this thing to be level. And so I just got a 3-foot level sitting across the seat, and you can see so far it's not level. So I just run this nut up a little bit until I do get it level. All right, front seat's in, it's level, it's good. And now I'm going to go to the back seat bracket. So I got this piece cut. Or the back of the seat bracket. You can see these rails. Right now I've got the seat run back quite a bit, exposing this bolt hole through the rail. And now the bolt hole on the back one is right here. So I'm going to pull the seat out, hook it up to power, and run it forward so I can expose that, and then put the back one in.